Good evening, everyone. Mike Breen on hand as we welcome you to One-on-One with Jeremy Lin, where tonight we have an in-depth conversation with the man responsible for Linsanity, one of the great times in New York Knicks history. Earlier this week, we caught up with Jeremy from Beijing. Hey, Jeremy, great to see you. So appreciate to have the time with you. It's been a fun week for Knicks fans because they've been enjoying Linsanity and really some of the most exciting moments in franchise history all week long as we've been replaying the games. Let's start off. Give us an update on your life. How's your health? How's your family? And how things are going over in Beijing?
Yeah, right now, first off, good to see you. This is awesome to do this. And right now I'm in Beijing. I'm just training, and we're able to go full go with, we're scrimmaging and stuff within our own team and just staying ready for if this season gets to go underway. And so we're kind of waiting for a decision. And life out here is getting back to normal. I mean, the malls and restaurants and everything are busy. And so there's a lot of traffic. And so things are definitely very close to how they were before. And besides that, family is doing well. My brother, sister-in-law, niece and nephew are all in New York right now. And so, this definitely, it already hit home because of what New York means to me, but now it's hitting home even more. And so besides that, though, we're all on our end staying safe.
So the mood of the city and the people starting to feel better about in terms of normalcy?
Yeah, in Beijing, everything really just, for the most part, everything is starting to get back to normal. I mean, not everything is exactly the same. So they still discourage you from having big parties in terms of tables of 6 or 8 or things like that. But we're still able to go out. We're able to eat. We're walking around the mall doing pretty much anything that you would want to do.
You've inspired a lot of people, by the way. Right away, you look to help. You've made some extraordinary financial contributions to help during this time. Can you tell the people some of the things you've been doing and how some of our viewers can help?
For me, I kind of struggled when COVID first, broke out. I didn't really take it seriously, but as I went back to California and our season was suspended, and California started to go into lockdown, it really hit home. And so I felt like I had to do something, and I started the Be the Light campaign. And basically, I started off with a $500,000 donation to Direct Relief and Feeding America, just for PPEs and meals, two of the most basic needs that people need right now. And then I also asked fans to kind of come alongside me to donate as well, and that I would match every dollar that was donated. And so right now, altogether, we're around 1.2 million in a couple weeks, and we're continuing to get more in donations. People are still hitting us up. People are still donating, and actually, I think right now we're gaining more momentum. And so we're gonna kind of evolve as the effects of COVID evolve as well. And so we're also going to highlight some of these other more local organizations who are doing really, really good work, especially in some of the areas that have been hit really, really hard by the virus.
That's just an incredible response. And by the way, you're not certainly alone in terms of ignorance in the beginning, as so many people had no idea just what was about to come upon us. But bravo to you for doing all that. Let's go to Linsanity. It's 8 years ago this past February. Sometimes it seems like it was just a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes it seems like forever ago. I always tell people, Jeremy, when they ask me about what were some of the best times of my broadcasting career, I tell them that, I broadcast a lot of big games, some historic games, but I've never had more fun in my career than that stretch of basketball. The joy that you brought to the team, to the organization, and just to NBA fans around the world was just off the charts. When you think back, what's the number one thing that sticks into your head?
Man, the number one thing I would say is just the fan support. Since then, I've gone through a lot, highs and lows. I've been, fortunate enough to win an NBA championship and gone through the championship parade and things like that. And that was incredible. But really just the electric, it's just what happened in New York during that stretch. And it was just, it's not something that I'll ever experience again. It's not really anything that even an NBA player may experience. It was that unique, and it was all built around just how the fans were just on a different level in terms of the energy, the excitement. That's really what I remember, and that's what brings a huge smile to my face when I think back.
Take us back to, you get signed in December, had the stint with Golden State, and then Houston was a possibility, but now the Knicks sign you with not a lot of fanfare. What were your expectations when you were signed, and what did the team tell you they expected?
Honestly, I didn't really hear much from the team. Like, the team was just like, we picked you up off waivers. And I didn't really know what to expect, because I'm looking at the roster, and there's, so many point guards, there's Mike Bibby, Tony Douglas, a lot of players. And then they had just drafted Shump too, Baron Davis. And so I'm kind of looking at the roster like, why do they want me? And then I remember going into the first practice, and it was like, hey guys, new players, Jeremy. Anyways, and then they just moved around and went about the practice, and it was like as if I was like didn't exist, and I like barely learned. Like, I couldn't, because that was during the lockout season, so they were just trying to focus on the players in the rotation, and they were just trying to get those players, the first 8 players, to be on the same page. So it was just really awkward for me. I didn't really feel a part of the team for the first month. Like, I don't even know if people, like, everybody knew my name, from the staff. And I didn't, I really didn't have expectations other than, look, I'm fighting for my NBA life right now. Like, I've gotten cut twice in the last 2 weeks, and I'm fighting for my NBA life, and I just need to do whatever it takes to stay on a roster as long as I can. And that's all I was thinking about.
Now, even though obviously you had a lot to prove, and as you say, you're fighting for your NBA life, did you have confidence coming in? Because you were playing really well. Back then it was called the D League, now the G League. But what kind of confidence did you have in terms of an NBA career?
I would say my confidence was young and raw, but I did have some confidence, right? My rookie year, I came in and I was more like stunned. And I couldn't, and I didn't realize that I had so many mental barriers my rookie year. Then I went to the D League, at that time, the D League, and it became obvious to me, like, okay, I'm not just a D League player. I'm more than a D League player. And so, and then I got the chance to match up against Steph and Monte every single day in practice my rookie year. And so I'm going head to head with these guys, getting so much better, learning so much. And I remember going into that lockout, and I was like, I'm definitely an NBA player. I'm definitely an NBA player. But again, it wasn't like I was expecting, like, oh, I'm an NBA player, I'm going to be a starter, and I'm going to have Linsanity. Not at all. I was just like, I'm an NBA player, and I just need to continue to work and get better. And I think right now I have the ability to be a backup point guard, and I need some time to grow into that. And that's kind of where I was that's how I was imagining my second year. Like, I can end up being a solid backup point guard, and I'll have some hiccups, but I'll get there. And then it just went like that.
Well, before we get into individual games, do want to ask you, as you say, the team was going forward with their rotation and had to get things figured quickly because of the lockout. But for you, the importance of, and this is for any NBA player, going to get that opportunity with the right coaching staff, with the right spot on a roster, with the right team. How about the role of Mike D'Antoni and his system, and then a couple of his assistants, which played a pretty key role, Kenny Atkinson and Mike's brother, Dan D'Antoni, in terms of them trying to get Mike saying, hey, this kid can play. We need to give him a chance. What do you remember from that?
I just remember in the beginning, again, fighting for my NBA life, I'm like, I got to do everything right. I'm a professional. And so I'm always trying to be the first one in, the last to leave. And so and at that time, I was kind of working out with Jerome Jordan and Steve Novak and other guys, Ronaldo Balkman and other guys who weren't really getting any run. And I was, come in before and I'll stay after. But Kenny was always the guy who was there. And so, if no one was there, I would be totally okay working out by myself. But then, like, every time I got there, Kenny would be there. And so we just developed a natural bond. Before you knew it, like, 7:30 a.m. or even like 2-3 hours before other players are showing up. Like we're in there watching film and getting individual work. Then we're getting work with some of the other guys. And then after we're getting more work and we're playing. And so that's where I developed that bond. And again, like I started to realize, wow, this system and the way that they coach spacing, the way that they coach pace and the way that everything is built. I'm like, the game's a lot easier. and I remember in practice, right? Like we would play practice, and then practice scrimmages and stuff like that with the players who weren't in the rotation. And I would do really well. And then I got sent to the D-League team, and I played one game and I had a triple-double with the Erie Bayhawks. And then I was like, and then I came back and I would get put in during like garbage time. But during those garbage minutes, like I was doing really well. I would come in, sometimes it'd be like 5 minutes and I would end up with 8 points and 3 assists. And I'm like, dang, this is like, either I got a lot better or the system, or I don't know what's going on. And I think from there, that's when guys were making a push. And I remember in the beginning, like one of the assistant coaches was like, you know why you can't get in the game? We don't put you in the game because you play basketball like it's a video game. Like you're playing like it's a video game, like it's like like street ball. And I was like, I don't really know what that means, but I mean, I'm a dynamic downhill player, and so that's how I play the game. I'm aggressive, overly aggressive at times, and that's how I play the game. But I think eventually they started to appreciate that and realize like, oh, maybe our team kind of needs some of that. And so then the assistant coaches started pushing Mike. Sorry, Coach. I should call him Coach D'Antoni, but I'm closer with him, so I just call him Mike sometimes. But and then he just and he gave me a chance, and I'm super. I owe him, my entire 10-year NBA career is, a big part of that is because he gave me that shot in the first place.
Back with Jeremy Lin. Jeremy, so now we go to the first game. New Jersey Nets game. Team was struggling. I think 2-11 in the previous 13 games. You played a little bit the night before in Boston, and now you get a chance to play some real minutes. What do you remember your mindset going into the game?
My mindset going into the game was if I don't do well, I'm getting cut. And if I don't do well, my NBA career is over. And so that was something that my agent had, made me aware of. And the night before in Boston, I played it safe, and my agent Roger Montgomery was just like, "Hey man, this might be it for you. You cannot play it safe." And I just remember I was praying a lot, and I was just like thinking like, "Hey, the most God glorifying thing I could do is just to play my brand of basketball, and if I fall flat on my face, I can accept that." But the one thing I couldn't accept is to go out not swinging. And so I just had tremendous peace. Again, I wrote about this a little bit last week, but I struggled heavily with anxiety before games, like really, really bad anxiety, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat at times. And before that game though, like I was calm as ever. I mean, I remember it like it was so different. I was so calm, and I was just sitting there the whole time like, all right, come on, coach, give me a chance. Sub me in, please. And, in the first quarter, our point guard got in foul trouble early, got 2 fouls, picked up 2 fouls, and he called me, and I just went up to the scores table, and I was like, here it is. Like, and I remember a line that Roger had said to me earlier that day. He's like, no matter what you do, like in tonight's game, you have to play Jeremy Lin basketball. And so as I went to the scores table, I was like, got to play Jeremy Lin basketball, got to play for God and trust, and be okay with anything that happens. And so, the first half ended and I had 6 points in the first half, and my career high was 12 at that time. So I'm almost like, I might have had 6 or 8 points. So, and to me, I was like, dude, if the game ended like right now and I ended with 6 points, like, I mean, that's not terrible. That's half of my career high, and I still have another half of basketball to play, but I was just comfortable. That first time I was comfortable with making plays. I was just in a groove, and I had energy. I had desperate energy because our team had played a back-to-back-to-back. And so I had this energy about me that maybe my teammates didn't have because they were so tired from playing heavy minutes the previous 2 nights as well. And then in the second half, I can't even explain to you what happened. Like, I don't remember it all. It was a blur, but like, I just kind of like blacked out and was in the moment and in the zone. I started doing stuff like celebrating, like I was doing this, I was swinging. It was just like, I let out like 18 months of emotion, built up anger or hurt from maybe, you know, my past NBA experiences. And I kind of just let it all out in one half of basketball.
And it might sound overly dramatic, but it's true. After that night, your life changed dramatically.
Without a doubt. I mean, it was got to be one of the biggest single, 24-hour or overnight changes in lifestyle ever. I mean, it was incredible what just happened from one day to the next. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, before that, I couldn't even get into the arena without them like being like, you know, MSG. I'm talking about the home arena. Like, they're like, who are you? Like, I'm a player. They're like, are you a trainer? I'm like, no, I'm a player. I remember one of the security guards like, Jerome Lin? We don't have a Jerome Lin here. And I'm like, no, it's Jeremy. And then all of a sudden it was like, everyone's like, dude, like, that was awesome. Blah. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, you're Linsanity. Now everyone's calling me Linsanity. So like, it was legitimately overnight.
Well, I mean, for all about broadcasting the games, doing it with Clyde, we were like scrambling to try and find as much information. Now, we had obviously some stuff in your background, but we were all scrambling just to find all this information. And I think one of the things that I found so appealing was how happy your teammates were for your success. We had so many shots of them on the bench when you make a play, and your teammates were downright giddy. And to see teammates that happy for another player's success, I thought was one of the real parts that was heartwarming to watch. Did you feel that while you were playing?
I felt that. I definitely felt that. And, I think I had a special bond with some of the guys because we had been working so hard behind the scenes. Like, we would work out so many hours and we would never get into games. And then even when the games would end, like, we would be doing sprints on the treadmill after the game because we didn't get in. And we were already doing sprints and conditioning before the game as well. And so we really put a lot of effort into it. And I just remember after every game, like, it was almost like too sentimental for me. Like, they were so happy for me that after the game, like, everyone would come up and give me a big hug. They would dap me up, give me a big hug, and they would whisper, like, something, a note, a line of encouragement. Man, you played so well, or I'm so proud of you, or you're so deserving of this. But it ended up, we were doing that after every single game. And I was like, it was almost uncomfortable for me, like, how much love that they were showing, because it was just like, I was young in my NBA career, but I had never experienced this type of, like, it was a different level of brotherhood and camaraderie. And even to this day, like, when I see some of these guys, or when I go from city to city or whatever, like, and I eat with them, like, it's just a special type of bond. And they were just showering me with so much love. And it almost didn't feel real. It felt like too much. And that kind of goes to show you what a good group of guys my teammates were.
Well, one of the guys was obviously Landry Fields. Tell us the Landry Fields couch story.
Yeah, I have been on the couch. So, when you get signed to a new team, they give you 30 days in a hotel. And so my 30 days were up, and I had 6 more weeks until the cut deadline. And in the cut deadline in February, like, if I made it past that deadline, I would be able to stay on the roster for the rest of the season. But I had 6 weeks, and I was like, looking around New York housing prices, I'm on the minimum. I had to, pay back a lot of my college loans and stuff like that. So I'm like, just trying to be economical about it. And I remember asking D'Antoni, I was like, hey, should I bring my car out here? I'm taking taxis everywhere. He's like, no, you shouldn't bring your car out here. And I'm like, okay, I'm definitely not getting an apartment. And so I just stayed on my brother's couch for 6 weeks, and he lived in Stuytown, and I was just sleeping there, crashing there every night. But then he had friends in town one weekend, and that's when I was like, all right, I'm gonna go ask the next person that I'm closest to on the, which was Landry. And so he was like, yeah, no problem. I'll just let you know it's not that big. I'm like, it's cool. Like, I would rather be there than nowhere, or on the ground. And so we get back at like 2 a.m. from Boston. And I get there and he has two couches. One's like super small and the other one's like just a little bit bigger. And I mean, I couldn't fit on it. I had like my feet were up over one end. My head was off the other end. I was already in like a little bit of like a fetal position trying to scrunch up. And but something about that nice rest that allowed me to play well the next night. So thank you, Landry.
So now that the hype is off the charts, it becoming one of the biggest stories, not just in the NBA, but in all of sports, and not just in the United States, but globally. How overwhelming did that get? And the pressure you must have felt in terms of now all the attention is on you to go from where you were to then. How difficult was that?
It was very difficult. Like for me to say it was very difficult, I could talk for an hour about how difficult it was. I mean, I was just scared. I'm not somebody who, played basketball to become famous. I'm more somebody that had to learn how to deal with some of the, I guess consequences. Because I mean, there's a lot of pros, but there are also some negatives to fame. And so I was just scared. People were changing around me. People that I loved and trusted were changing around me. People were trying to get stuff from me or whether it was the attention or the fame or the money or whatever. And so it was really hard. And then even the hardest part about basketball was that I started to see a shift in my heart that I was trying to play to be who everyone else wanted me to be or who everyone else said I was to be. And I ended up trying to live up to this phenomenon of Linsanity versus being comfortable with who I am. And I think that's where it was, a 5 to 7 year journey. I would say about a 5-year journey where I had to kind of, take a look in the mirror. And I made a lot of mistakes. I made personal mistakes, lifestyle mistakes, basketball mistakes. And I had to really look in the mirror and refine my faith and my identity in Christ as just like me, not Linsanity. And that, so I lost a lot of joy for the game. And I remember being actually pretty miserable at times. I remember like the first 2-3 weeks were awesome. And then after that, it just became, the anxiety came back really heavy. I remember just feeling like, wow, I'm pretty empty in my heart. Cause I just felt like I was just trying so hard to live up to everything that everyone was building me up to be. Yeah.
I don't think a lot of people can relate to that kind of intense spotlight that you go through. And obviously, we've heard from you so many times how your faith has guided you through so much of that. But besides your faith, was there any one person in particular who was instrumental in helping you kind of navigate through all of this?
Yeah, there are definitely multiple people. My family, the one thing about my family is it doesn't matter how famous I get or it doesn't matter how bad I'm playing. They always they treat me how I should be treated. They call me out when I need to be called out. They encourage me when I need to be encouraged. And besides that, I remember just, my agent, Roger Montgomery, he's a strong Christian and he was just helping guide me as well through a lot of kind of the heartache or the pressure, how to deal with the pressure, how to find myself mentally. And then, Steve Chen, who, is my pastor from back home in California, gave me a lot of advice as well. So really I would say my family and those two people were kind of cornerstones for me during that time when everything else was going crazy and everyone around me was changing. I felt like they were stable for me and they gave me that normalcy that I craved.
Right. All right, 2 more games I want to ask you about. Obviously, the Laker game. I still talk to people who say that's the loudest they've ever heard the Garden, and certainly in a long time. There was so much hype going in, and you just performed at an incredible level that night. What do you remember from the Laker game?
I remember, first off, for the previous, 48 hours up to that game, it was just, you couldn't go anywhere in New York. Like, I was trying not to look at anything, and I was trying to remove myself from it, and I couldn't even do that. Like, it was billboards. Every time you get in a taxi, Like, and you look on the little TV in the New York taxi, it was like about that game and other stuff. And everyone, you know, every website that I was going to was front and center. You know, Lakers versus Knicks. And I just remember I got in a taxi to go to MSG, and I had to try to put some headphones in and just clear my mind and pray a little bit. But, you know, I couldn't, and I was just looking around. All of a sudden it pops up on the TV in the taxi. And it's like, it was like talking about how Kobe was saying, like, oh, I don't know who he is. And for me, like, I grew up in Northern California. And so I grew up a Warriors fan. And you know, one of the, I mean, NorCal and SoCal have this like huge rivalry. So it's like a huge no-no to root for the Clippers or the Lakers. And that's what it was like growing up for me. And so now it's like the Lakers, all my buddies from NorCal were hitting me up like, dude, you better like, you better show out tonight. Like, this is against the Lakers. And so after Kobe had kind of said that, I was like, dang, why did he say that? And I was like, you know what? Every time I touch the ball, I'm gonna be aggressive. I'm trying to shoot as many times as I can, and obviously within reason. But I was like, if I'm unsure, it's going up, and that was kind of my mindset going into the game. And you know, and I remember, you know, they put Derek Fisher on me, and they're going on under a lot of pick and rolls because people didn't know if I could shoot, and they were, you know, and then sometimes they would switch out the big men, and so I ended up getting a lot of shots, and I got into a good rhythm. And from there, I remember in the first like 3 minutes, I think I had like 4 buckets, and I was like, you know what, it feels good, everything's feeling good, I got a great rhythm. And like you said, I've never heard the Garden that loud. I've never heard the Garden that loud.
Lin for 3, bang! The Jeremy Lin show continues here at Madison Square Garden.
Another one that I know I'll never forget was in Toronto against the Raptors. I tell people, when you were introduced to the starting lineup, that may have been the loudest cheer I've ever heard for a visiting player. And then when you hit the game winner, it may have been the loudest cheer I've ever heard on the road for a player who hit a game winner against a home team.
The crowd on its feet here at the Air Canada Center. Lin puts it up. Bang! Jeremy Lin from downtown, and the Knicks take the lead. Amazing here at the Air Canada Center. Tenths of a second remaining. Linsanity continues.
And that was an incredible night because the team was struggling a bit. I think we were down as many as 12 in the fourth quarter. Take us through that game and especially, obviously, the ending.
Like you said, we were struggling. Toronto came with a great game plan, and they knew exactly, they were fully prepared. And the fact that it was a home game for us on the road made it so that Toronto was even more like ready to go. And so I remember just getting stormed. I remember thinking like, dude, I am playing so terrible. And like somehow the stats were deceiving. Like it made it seem like I played better than I really did. But in my mind, I remember we're down 12 with like, you know, whatever, 3-4 minutes left. And it seemed like it was out of hand. And I remember like there was just a few people courtside who were just hounding me and just like teeing off on me verbally all game. And I was just like, getting so frustrated. And then within the last, like we were down 6 or something like that with just a minute left or something. And then next thing you know, it was bucket. You know, Shump got a steal, gets a fast break, other things like that. You know, Amari gets an and one, I get an and one. And I think we're down 8 actually. And all of a sudden it was like, you know, we had tied it up or something. And I remember Shump comes down, he shoots that mid-range jumper. It goes off just by a little bit. Tyson does his Tyson tap, and I catch it, and I'm like, okay, it's me against Calderon. And I was like, and I remember I see Tyson, he's like inching up. He wants to come set the pick and roll, and we have about 15 seconds left, and I'm like thinking to myself, if he comes and sets this pick and roll, they're going to double me. And I was like, I need to get this shot up. I need to shoot this shot. I need to win this game. And so I remember looking to D'Antoni, and I'm like, no pick and roll, let me ISO. No pick and roll, let me ISO. And he looks at me because, I mean, pick and roll was what I was, that was my bread and butter. And he was like, hey, man, if that's what you want, go for it. So I'm telling Tyson, like, no pick and roll. I'm like, no pick and roll. And he can't hear me because it's so loud. I mean, it is so loud. The entire arena was already on their feet. Like, before the shot even went in or before I even took a shot, the entire arena was on their feet cheering. Majority were cheering, and some of them were, like, booing. The hardcore Raptors fans were, like, booing. And so I was like, just go anywhere, but, like, go anywhere, just don't come near me. And I came down, and my plan was to drive, but he just kept backing up. He kept backing up, and I was like, I got to pull the trigger right here. And that was my only three that I made from the top of the key that entire season. If you look at, like, my analytics from that season, I was 1 for 14 or 1 for 13 or 1 for 14 from top of the three keys.
Really?
Yeah. All my other threes were from the wing or the corner. And so that was the only one from the top of the key, and that was the perfect time. And then, man, that was an insane night.
Back with Jeremy Lin, who's so kind enough to join us from Beijing. I would imagine you're pretty much asked about Linsanity almost every day of your life. Could that be true?
Yeah. Even now, all the fans that come up are still, they still talk about New York.
If you had to say, and this is a hard question, but you probably thought about it. What did you learn about yourself during Linsanity?
One, I learned about myself. I learned that no amount of success will ever make you fulfilled, and I think that's a very interesting concept. And people ask me that a lot, and it's the most Debbie Downer answer, but it's kind of true. It's like, you think about the best players, when they win one championship, they try to go for the next, or certain players when they already have a great legacy, but they're moving on and they're focused on the next kind of goal. And that's the one thing I learned about myself, was that, like, I'm wired to always, if I accomplish or achieve something, I will always move on to the next, or I'll be like, oh, I achieved NBA starting point guard level, so I have to maintain that, or I have to continue to grow in that, or I have to win championship 1 or 2 or 3. And I think, like, there's always some goal, and even after you retire, there are other goals. And so I think, like, for me, the one thing I learned was that I had to really learn how to be content and fully fulfilled in the moment and in the journey. Because when you get to the destination, you're only just going to set a new destination for yourself. And so that's the biggest thing. And I was, again, like I said, it was a 5-year journey, and that was where faith saved me. But that's the biggest thing I learned about myself. And I also learned that, miracles do happen. People ask me all the time, like, did you know that you could do that? And I'm like, no, I didn't. I was just as surprised as you were. Like, that was a miracle. And to this day, I'm like, no one can tell me that God didn't perform a miracle in my life, because what the public knows is only, like, a small portion of all these small things that had to line up for that to really happen.
Well, you learned so much from the highs and the lows, and there were lows, as you pointed out too, in terms of, right, you got injured at the end and weren't able to play in the playoffs. Mike D'Antoni wound up resigning. How difficult was that, dealing with that toward the end of the season after such a high for a good stretch of time?
Yeah, I mean, that year, I feel like I went through, like, what someone might experience in 7 to 9 years in the NBA. Like, I experienced in that 1 year. And we had so much spotlight, and we had, the drama, and and D'Antoni resigning, and we had all this other stuff. And then we had, at that time, the Heat, Miami Heat, with, the big three. And so, I mean, it was a lot. But I think I felt like if I could go through that, I could go through anything else. And so that really, it really, like, set me up to be able to handle some of the tougher situations that I kind of had to face later on in my career as well. And so, you know, I had to go through even worse injuries. You know, I had to go through even worse disappointments. I had to go through a lot of stuff that were tougher to go through than just what I experienced in that season. But that season gave me a taste of that to be able to handle what would come next.
Well, you've never struck me, and obviously by your comments here, that you're somebody who looks backward. You're always looking forward, and again, your faith is a big part of that. But when you do look back at what an amazing time that was, and then Houston comes calling, and they offer you an incredible contract that's impossible not to say yes to, and you have to leave a place that gave you so much joy, and you know, roller coaster ride as well. Any regrets at all of not staying in New York? I know that, again, that's part of the business of the NBA, but it was such a special relationship there for a while.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if I've ever even said this publicly, because in my mind, like you said, I'm looking forward, and I think, yeah, I'm not sure if I said this publicly, but I don't have any regrets, because really, to me, like I didn't really have a decision. Like, I only had one contract. I was only offered one contract. We couldn't get anything from any other team, and so. And I had to go find a contract from somebody. And I remember when Houston gave the offer, I promised you, I had just finished a workout, and I got into my car, got the phone call from my agent, and I said to him, I said, can you tell Houston to lower the offer? Like, this is too much. I was like, can you tell Houston to lower the offer, because I wanted to go back to New York, and I wanted New York to match. And so again, it was like you said, the time there with the fans and everything, it was so special. I was like, I need to go back to New York. Like, that's where my heart is. And so I called my agent, and I was like, hey, find a way to get Houston give me a less good of a contract so that New York will match it. And he said we can't. Like, he's like, this is Houston's final offer. Like, we've been talking to them for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Like, this is it. We're at the end. Like, and this is the only offer that you got. You have to sign it. And so I remember signing it. And again, this is no disrespect to Houston. At that time, I didn't know anything about the organization or the city. I just knew New York. And so I actually was trying really hard. I was like, man, we got to find a way to make this contract, like, bring down the money, bring down the years, whatever we need to do, like, make it easier so that it's not like a poison pill. And that's honestly where my heart was at. And it obviously didn't happen. But in my mind, I was like, all right, well, I still hope that New York matches, and there's still a chance. But it was a long 72 hours.
Lived my whole life in New York and been a sports fan. Very few athletes have been embraced like that immediately, and in such a short time. And sometimes Knicks fans don't understand. You only played 35 games, yet you were so embraced and were such a part of New York sports lore. Again, if you can just express your feelings on what New York and the fans meant to you.
I mean, it was the most special, precious moment. And And you know, in the previous question you asked about regrets, my biggest regret is that I didn't soak in every second of that experience. That's my biggest regret. My biggest regret is that I was too immature and young to really learn how to not take that for granted. Like, I was so set on the next season and rehabbing from my injury and what I wanted to happen next that, like, I couldn't stay in the moment and just appreciate that and appreciate New York for who New York was and what New York did for me, who all those fans were, and like what that meant. It was so special. Like, it was so special. I mean, I don't even want to try to use words to describe it, but I would say that, like, to me, like, right now with COVID and everything in New York going through what it's going through, it's a very, very tough time. And it is it's a very, very tragic time, very tragic. And I'm, like, so thankful to the Knicks and to MSG for giving me this opportunity, because they could have chose any point in New York history to rebroadcast. And like you said, I only played 35 games. I mean, there are some legends that have come through this organization and done amazing things. And they choose to broadcast Linsanity. And that stretch is what they're using right now to inspire everyone who is going through what everyone is going through in New York with COVID. I mean, that is incredible to me. Like, that is a shout out to the Knicks. That's a shout out to MSG. That is a shout out to the fans. That is a shout out to New York. Like, it is, I'm still blown away that people even remember that, because in my mind, it's so long ago. Like, but for people to still have some emotional attachment and for it to be the singular moment in Knicks history that they want to elevate and to use for inspiration. Like, I'm still learning to this day in 2020, I'm still learning the impact and the special, like, how precious that time was. And so again, for me to be a part of this right now is like, I'm just kind of floored and grateful.
Well, Jeremy, you first off, you're being too hard on yourself on saying, being able to realize what you're going through at the time. Everybody has that difficulty, but you're continuing to inspire people, not only with what you did back then, but with what you're doing now with the response to the COVID-19. Well, what about the future? What's the next source? I know you're playing in the Chinese Basketball League, and you still want to play. You're only, I think, 32 in August. You're going to be 32 in August. What's the future for you, both basketball-wise and after basketball?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, right now thinking about the future, because it seems like everything's changing every day, and so we're in limbo. We don't know if the season is going to finish out or if it's just going to be canceled. And but the one thing that I've been doing a lot of is and I love it, is I'm hibernating in the gym right now, and we are working and playing and scrimmaging, and I'm doing skill work. And there's so many things from, like, what I realized was there's so many effects of, my 2 years of injury in Brooklyn, that, not only the physical effects that now I feel better physically than I ever have in my whole life, because of the way I'm moving and the way that we've kind of engineered my body and stuff. But mentally, I feel like I'm at a different place too. I went through a lot of heartache. I went through a lot of trauma, and I realized that there was a lot of things that I had to continue to work through, of, like, the injuries and how, maybe when I got on the floor, I was a little bit afraid to get injured, or I was a little bit cautious about going in certain situations. Those type of things, like, I feel like I've worked through. And so at this point, when it comes to basketball, I want to finish the season out for sure, if it finishes. And if not, in this summer, I'll kind of evaluate whatever options I have. But man, I'm just so excited to get back on the court and play 5-on-5 and to play in actual games, because I just feel like I'm in a different place. Like, I kind of feel like I'm a rookie, and I was able to move past those 130 games that I missed through injury. I was able to move past some of these other difficulties, and so I'm super excited. And then after, I really want to do a lot of, my foundation work, and I just want to help people. And I think, COVID is going to have, effects and impacts for decades. It's going to be much, harder than people realize. I think even one thing that's really heavy on my heart right now is just seeing that a lot of nonprofits aren't able to sustain themselves anymore. And so even when things do go back to normal, a lot of nonprofits will not have had the chance to be able to work and build through this, this crisis, and to be able to continue to. And so we're going to see a drop in a lot of nonprofit organizations. And so some of these effects I'm already, like, starting to learn about, to see how I can be involved and how I can help, and what, in what ways can we kind of be a light.
Well, you'll always have a special place in the hearts of all Knicks fans for the way you inspired them then. But obviously, your inspiration continues in so many more important ways. Thank you so much for your generosity, and you're continuing to worry about other people and having an impact on others. Jeremy, can't thank you enough for being with us. It's been a special week for us here at MSG, reliving some of those days and getting to catch up on you, and so happy that everything's going so well for you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Mike. It's good to go down memory lane and do this interview with you. Thank you.
Obviously, a huge shout out to all the fans. Thank you for the energy, as always. We love playing here.